Well, in this short video, we're going to talk about the planning function that's involved in human resource management. And planning, as we all know, refers to generally figuring out ultimately where we're trying to go, where we're trying to end up, and developing a course of action for ultimately how to get there. And so planning for human resources looks very specific, maybe different than some of the other planning functions involved in management. When human resource planning, we're referring specifically to employees and how do we plan and anticipate the needs of the organization, but also fulfill those particular needs when they arise. And so there's a number of different stages or steps that we utilize in human resource planning. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to engage in and complete what's called a job analysis. Before we can figure out ultimately who we need to hire, we have to figure out what are we hiring for? And that's really what a job analysis entails. We're actually trying to get detailed information about the jobs in our organization. We're trying to figure out ultimately, what are the requirements of the jobs? What are the tasks, the duties, the responsibilities? What kind of knowledge do applicants need to have to fulfill the responsibilities of the job and do the job very effectively? And so unless we do this, then we have no ability to really identify a qualified applicant in the workplace because we have no idea what we're trying to compare them to. And so the job analysis would be that first piece here. Typically, things that are produced from a job analysis, and I kind of alluded to these and mentioned them before. First thing is we're going to produce a job description. And if you've applied for any type of open or vacant position before, you've probably seen a job description. Job descriptions outline what we refer to as the tasks, duties, as well as responsibilities of a particular job. We refer those as TDRs. So the tasks, ultimately, what are you going to be doing, your duties, and your responsibilities. So this serves a couple of different benefits. The first thing, from an employer side, if I outline the tasks, duties, and responsibilities, right, what the person is going to be doing during the course of their work, I now can determine what type of knowledge they need, what type of skills they need, as well as the abilities needed to perform the job effectively. Now, from the applicant side, say you're applying for a position, right? The job description is very helpful for you because it determines, or at least shows you, what you're going to be doing on a regular basis. And so this can help formulate, or you can formulate an opinion as to whether or not you feel like the job is going to be a good fit for you, because we all know things that we like and don't like, and we're probably going to try and stay away from those positions that incorporate tasks, duties, and responsibilities that we don't necessarily like. So that's the benefit there. And from an organizational side, you obviously want applicants applying for the job that feel like they're going to be a good fit, because the worst thing that can happen is to go through the entire, recruiting, the selection process, select somebody for the position, and then all of a sudden they don't like the job for whatever reason. And so a job description can help try and alleviate that to a certain degree, of course, although you can't eliminate it entirely. The next thing that you'll find that's produced by a job analysis is what we call a job specification. And a job specification produces a couple different things similar to a job description. It produces what we call knowledge, skills, and I'll write over here, abilities. Commonly referred to as KSAs in human resource circles. And so knowledge, skills, abilities. What we're trying to outline here are what are the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that a qualified applicant should possess to perform this job effectively. And so this is good for a number of different reasons. Obviously, from an interviewer standpoint, if you're a screening type person where you're looking at resumes, you know exactly how to filter out certain applicants if they don't have the required knowledge, the required skills, and the required abilities. That's an important thing. But what this also does is it signals to the workforce what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you're looking for. And what you're trying to do from an organizational side is to weed out the people that don't meet the minimum qualifications. Now, you're truly never going to do this entirely, because you always have people that think, well, maybe I can kind of squeak through and no one will notice, right? And those people are always going to apply. But for the most part, if you establish, hey, such and such position requires a master's degree, 5 years of experience, yada, 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 you're very detailed. If someone sees that and they don't have those particular items, then they're probably less inclined to apply, because they don't really want to waste their time, and obviously you don't want them to waste your time as well. So that's the first part right there. Those are the things that we do in terms of getting together and determining the job analysis piece. The next thing that we're going to do is we need to actually do a little bit of forecasting. And specifically, we are going to forecast the labor supply as well as demand. And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to anticipate the needs for our workforce, right? So the supply, obviously the available workers that are in your particular area. And so we're going to look in a couple different ways. You can look internally, right? That's one opportunity. You can also look externally, so you can look outside the organization. Generally, organizations try and fill positions internally. First, there's a certain fit, right? You kind of know the employee, so you have a little bit more background about them. You know they fit into the organizational culture already, at least they should. So there are some benefits. It also serves as a motivating mechanism, because if employees know that you promote heavily from within, they're more inclined to try and apply for positions within your organization, because they know that you promote more heavily from within rather than going for the outside and trying to find applicants. So that can be beneficial. But the problem therein lies, if you don't have internal applicants that have the required or needed knowledge, skills, and abilities, then obviously you have to look outside the organization. There's no way that you can continue to try and attract employees internally if they don't have the required skill sets. And so you may have to look outside the organization. Now, there are a couple of tools that you can use to try and forecast labor supply and demand, or at least try and anticipate what supply is going to be like. You can use what we call skill inventories, and I'll write this down over here. A skill inventory is essentially a profile for each of the employees within the organization. And what that profile shows is it shows training that each employee's had. It shows, what type of educational background, previous work experience, positions that they've held, maybe aspirations, right? Future jobs they've identified that they're interested in. Really anything that's needed for you to make an assessment if the candidate actually could be a good fit. And these are really helpful. It's basically the equivalent of like a Facebook page, but it's internal to the organization, and they have many benefits. But from an organization side, I can do a quick search and maybe search for a certain skill or search for a certain educational background. And very quickly, I can see if anyone meets that criteria, and then I can contact them, maybe encourage them to apply. And that could be a little easier because I know they have the desired skill set. And so those are very, very beneficial. Another thing that employers use, what we refer to as replacement charts. And a replacement chart is a particular succession planning tool, and so we're trying to plan for replacing certain employees. And really what you do is you identify key positions in the organization, right? Positions that are identified as what we refer to as A positions, right? They're crucial for the success of the organization. And then what we do is we try and identify potential candidates to fulfill those roles eventually. And we identify, well, maybe this candidate could be a good fit for this position eventually. But what are the skills they need? How can we shape them and train them now so that ultimately when this person does retire, we have someone that we can immediately plug in and then can actually perform the job effectively. Now, we've obviously anticipated the supply of labor, right, internally and externally. Usually you try and go internally first because it's a little more minimal in terms of cost than obviously hiring recruiters or advertising for certain positions and things. But as far as demand goes, how we anticipate demand is we look at past trends, right? Looking at past sales. We take a look if there's any additional variables with seasonality, and we look at economic conditions like the consumer confidence. We look at consumer spending, GDP, right? Those are things that we're going to look at to try and assess what demand is like. Now, once we've done that, then we're going to go on to the last particular stage of the human resource planning process, and that's supply along with demand. And so what we need to do here is, now that we've forecasted what demand is like, and we know what our labor supply is, we have to make sure that they're consistent with one another. And so this can involve a couple different scenarios. First situation is we're involved in a particular situation to which we have too much labor, right? We forecasted demand. We determined that based upon economic conditions and a few other variables that we know that spending is lower. And so we don't have a need for so many employees. And so we have to change the labor, the amount of labor that we have that's on our payroll, and we have to make it consistent with demand. So this a lot of times can involve things like layoffs, right? Removing employees. We saw a lot of that happen as a result of the recession that began in 2008, that many employees unfortunately lost their positions because a lot of organizations believed that the labor supply was excessive based upon their anticipated demand, and so they resorted to things like layoffs. You can also resort to providing incentives for like early retirement. Instead of having to lay off employees, maybe contacting current employees that are already close in age to that retirement time and giving them incentives to retire, and then obviously not filling those positions, right? Kind of having a freeze on that particular position, right? Like attrition with a hiring freeze is very, very common, because you're not necessarily reducing morale by eliminating employees, and then the survivors deal with the psychological effects of wondering if they're next. That can be very detrimental to productivity. Now, the other situation, and obviously more ideal, is you identify that you don't have enough labor and you need more employees because you anticipate more demand. In that case, we're going to get to the point to where we have to actually hire. We have to fill those roles. And fortunately, because we've done the job analysis, we figured out what the job description is, we've identified the job specification, we will be in a better position to actually recruit qualified applicants. So check back later on. I'm going to record an additional video that will deal with specifically the recruitment process and then also with selection.